Good evening, everybody from all across the country and parts of the outside world as well. The day is finally here. Selection Sunday is now in front of us, and oh boy, I told you, I told everyone, this could be the most insane tournament in league history, and I mean that wholeheartedly. We have an insane bracket to reveal, and to help me with that, I have by my side Iowa State head coach David Smith and West Virginia head coach River Mays. Gentlemen, what are you looking forward to the most about this bracket reveal?
Definitely looking forward to seeing how this pans out with so many top-tier teams as well as some lower seeds looking to make some noise. I think this could be a year we see a lot of lower seeds make some decent runs.
I agree, especially once we get into exactly who those teams are. But I'd also like to ask you, Coach Smith, what do you think of the possibility of having a Final Four that, in my opinion, could be the most mixed result in terms of seeding the league has ever seen?
I think that's the ultimate question. I think with this tournament and all the conferences itself being so deep with good teams, we could see a whole bunch of 7, 6, 8 seeds in the Elite Eight in the Final Four, which would create chaos in the Final Four.
And that's exactly what we are looking for when it comes to March Madness. Chaos, madness, complete destruction of hopes and dreams, both on the hardwood, and also for people that make their brackets. But let's not waste any more time and get into this. So before we reveal the number one overall seed, if you guys have been tracking the past bracketologies that we've put up this season, the East region is the home for the number one overall seed, and that, my friends, are the Iowa Hawkeyes. 31-1 overall, undefeated in the Big Ten, undefeated overall up until the Big Ten championship game versus Wisconsin. But even with that loss, even with how bad it was, there was still, I guess, no doubt in the committee's mind that they deserve a number one seed. Gentlemen, what do we think of the Hawkeyes?
Hawkeyes are definitely a tough outcome March. Definitely with the team to watch this March. Despite losing in the conference championship game, I think they're the team that everybody's chasing still.
I agree. I think they absolutely deserve the number one overall seed. They proved that both non-conference and in conference, and I don't take what happened in the Big Ten championship game to heart when examining the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Exactly. It's just one game out of a whole stretch where they were just completely dominant. And yeah, like I said, I feel like this was the best team, and the committee felt the same way. But we start looking at this East region as we see Iowa there at 31-1. Who will they play? Well, they will play the winner of Tennessee Tech and UC Irvine. Those are the Big West and OVC representatives. Not much there. I pray for their well-being in regards to facing Iowa. But moving on down to the 8 and 9 line. Here's where it gets interesting. New Mexico State, the winners of Conference USA at 29-3, are at the 8 line, and to face off with them in the first round, we have none other than the Bears of Baylor at 22-9. This is going to be an insane matchup. Boys, talk about it a little bit.
Definitely New Mexico State, tough team. They beat out Louisiana Tech in their conference championship game, who is a solid opponent. They gave them their only 2 losses of the season, and Baylor made a nice little tourney for themselves in the Big 12 tourney, knocking off WVU, who they eventually lost earlier in the season to there. I think it's definitely a good matchup there. It's going to be an intriguing one. Now, it is a tough second-round draw for whoever wins this one, but I think this will be a matchup that creates some fireworks early on in the tournament.
I agree. Go
I
ahead.
agree as well. I think it's if not the best, it's one of the best of the non-power six teams in college basketball in New Mexico State against a quality Big 12 team in Baylor that has held their own in conference play.
Absolutely, and the Baylor Bears actually had a good run of wins at the end of the season. Very young team, all freshmen, mind you, up until next season when they get some veteran leadership back. Moving on down to the 5-12 line, we have the Crimson Tide of Alabama, and they will be playing the Sun Belt champions, Old Dominion. Should we say upset alert?
I don't know on that one. Alabama's a pretty tough squad. I will give kudos to Old Dominion for making a nice run for themselves there through the Sun Belt tournament. They were the favorites. But if that's a 5-12 matchup, that's usually the line where you see a first-round upset. It's the most common in March Madness. So you could see it there possibly.
I agree. Moving on down to the 4-13 line. The Jayhawks of Kansas make it here past Alabama. Looking at the record, some people may scratch their heads, but we got to remember, Kansas beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa in non-conference play, and they will go up against Fairleigh Dickinson, the NEC representatives. I don't think much of this matchup. I think Kansas will handle business, but you never know. The 6-11 line, we got Texas Tech at 25-7. Made a nice little run to the Big 12 championship game. They fell to eventual champs OK State by 9 points. Very respectable. And they will have to go up against Louisiana Tech, the aforementioned team that New Mexico State handed both of their losses to. Fellas, do we think Louisiana Tech has a chance here?
I won't write them off right away, but I will say Texas Tech's schedule has definitely prepared them for the tournament. I think I'm going to give the nod to Texas Tech in this one, even though the records may not align there. Texas Tech played a way tougher stretch of games, and they're going to be more tournament ready, in my opinion.
I agree. Coach Smith, what about you? What do you think?
I agree. First-hand experience of what Texas Tech can do. I know they're a strong team, and I think they can make a deep run in the tournament.
They definitely can. They have the pieces there. Headlined by junior small forward Isaiah Streller. Excellent player that could be on his way to the NBA if it wasn't for the lockout. Moving on down to the 3-14 lines, we got the Bulls of South Florida, 31-1. They could have been 32-0 on the season, but they had one loss to Tulane by 1 point. They will be going up against Southern Illinois at the 14 line. South Florida, I feel like, is a sneaky team, but they're really young, so you never really know with those all-freshman teams. At the 7 line, we got the Johnnies, St. John's at 26-6. They will play Oregon at 22-9. I have a feeling that we could see a 10-7 in this case. What about you guys?
I think it could definitely happen for sure, but I think St. John's is a tough team, but they are notorious to slip up, losing some late games to Butler in the season, But that's a questionable loss there, especially if you're looking for this team to make a good tournament run.
I agree. And moving on down to the 2-15 line, the SEC tournament champions, the LSU Tigers, are here. They jumped up a lot as the season started dwindling down, and they will play the Ivy League representatives, Cornell. Boys, when you look at this this bracket, who do you think is going to the Final Four from here?
It's hard to pick against the chalk here. I'm going to have to go with Iowa, and if I'm going to have to give myself a sleeper out of this region, it's going to be Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a little bit of an older squad against a South Florida squad who's quite young. It's been an impressive job there by Coach Muhammad this season to bring in some great talent, but I think Texas Tech might be my sleeper to come out of this region as well.
And what about you, Coach Smith?
I agree. I think you can't look past Iowa, but just to get, I think LSU's hitting their stride at the right moment. I think they can give Iowa a run for their money, and if I can't pick Iowa, which I'm not going to, I'm going to pick LSU to make the Final Four. And then I look at the 5 seed Alabama. I think Alabama can be the sleeper team. I know they had intriguing second round matchup against Kansas, having played earlier this season. But I think Alabama can get hot, and when they get hot, watch out.
Oh, for sure. They're a very talented team, headlined by their guard duo, C.J. Parker and Ray Robinson. Those two can fill the bucket like no one else. But we shall move on to the South region, host of the second best 1 seed. Go Pokes. The Cowboys are here at 31-1 overall. 1 lone loss in their Big 12 schedule to Baylor, who we saw already in the bracket. And they are Big 12 champs, outright champs, with that win over Texas Tech to end it. So we move on to see their region. They will get the winner of Grambling State versus Coppin State. 2 very interesting teams from the SWAC and then from the MEAC. I don't know if any of those 2 have a chance. I wouldn't bet on it. The 8 and 9 line is a fun one. We got the Bruins of UCLA, runner-ups to Arizona State in the Pac-12 championship game. And my oh my, we got ourselves a blue blood matchup in the first round. We got Duke at the 9 line. What are we thinking, guys?
I'm gonna have to go. Oh, sorry. So you go first.
I love this matchup. I think it's great for TV, blue blood matchup, and I think it's a toss-up. I think there's 2 really good teams from the Pac-12 and the ACC, and I think whichever one that wins that game can give Oklahoma State a run for their money.
I agree.
I'm going to have to go with Duke myself in this one. I like this Duke squad. Personally, I don't know if either of them can get past Oklahoma State in that second matchup. This is a very strong set of 1 seeds in this tournament.
Absolutely. Maybe the strongest that we've seen in recent history. But when we move on down to the 5 line, and we got the Wolverines from Michigan, Ann Arbor. Mix the 2 up, but it's all good. At 25-6, they were preseason number 1. Fell a little bit, but that's the Big Ten for you. Tough games everywhere, and they get Texas A&M Corpus Christi at 28-4. This screams upset, but I do not know. I believe in Michigan. We go on down to the 4 line. We got Louisville, 26-5. Had a very solid season. Felt like they could have done a little better, but they are still a very talented team with some potential to make some noise. They will have to go up against the Flyers of Dayton at 26-6. Guys, Dayton might be the most dangerous 13 seed.
1,000% the most dangerous 13 seed. The Atlantic 10 isn't a slouch of a conference, and to have a team from the Atlantic 10 and get the auto bet at a 13 seed isn't very common. So this would be an upset watch I'd put out there, more so than the Michigan versus Texas A&M Corpus Christi match, I'd say.
I'd have to agree. We move on down to the 6 and 11 line. We got the Cavaliers of Virginia at 25-6. They had a scorching start to the season, ran into some of the bigger teams in their conference and lost their way a little bit, but still a very solid season. But then they got to go up against the Spartans of Michigan State. This has upset written all over it. What do you guys think?
If there was one team in this tournament who I believe can make a Final Four run as a double-digit seed, it's going to have to be Michigan State. With the history of 11 seeds making it to the Final Four and doing well in this tournament, paired with this team's talent and some of the wins they have on their resume playing in such a tough conference, this is my double-digit seed Final Four pick if I had to pick one.
Coach Smith, what do you think?
I agree. I think on paper, Michigan State is by far not the 11th best team in this bracket, and I think they're a very competitive team, not only to pull off the upset against Virginia, but to again make a deep tournament run.
And I think that is all in the cards. We go on down to the 3 line. We got the Sun Devils of Arizona State, 30-2. Some people might look at this and think, oh, they should have been a 2 seed. But the Pac-12 wasn't insanely strong this year. They will have to go up against Mercer, a surprise candidate from the SoCon, at 22-10. The 7-10 line is where things get a little interesting. we got the Memphis Tigers at 26-5. They're at the 7 line. They got torched a little bit by Tulsa in the American Conference Tournament semifinals, but they're still a very, very good team. Young as well. They got a lot of potential in that team, and they will play Kansas State, another Big 12 team, at 22-9. We see a lot of these Big 12 teams, don't we?
Yeah, very deep conference this year. I think this one, Kansas State may even enter as a slight favorite. The Big 12 is a very deep conference overall, and Memphis has had some questionable losses throughout the seasons, ones that make you scratch your head a little bit.
I agree. K-State is one of those teams, in my opinion, that you don't know what you're going to get from them every night. So in a way, they're a very interesting wild card in this region. But we will finish it off with Kentucky at the 2 line. Man, they were sitting at that 1 line for so long, and then just a couple unfortunate results, specifically two losses in a row to LSU. And now they're at a 2 seed, and they will be playing Stony Brook, the AEC representatives. Fellas, who's making it to the Final Four for you in this region?
In this region, I'm going to go against the chalk here. I'm going to go with my aforementioned upset pick. I'm going to go with Michigan State to make the Final Four out of this. I know it's a little bit bold, but that's my Final Four pick there. You got to spice the show up a little bit, give out some upset picks, and that's going to be my big upset pick. I have them as my Final Four team. This isn't as strong of a region as the East region, I believe, because they don't have the juggernaut that is Iowa. But I think this team has the potential to make a Final Four run.
I agree, and let's just put it this way. There is a reason they were ranked preseason top 10. Coach Smith, who you got making it?
I look at Kentucky as the 2 seed. I think, they had 2 losses to LSU late in the season, but some teams have that one team that's their Achilles heel, and that may be Kentucky with LSU. But I think Kentucky's still a strong team, and I think they have all the players to make a deep tournament run.
Oh, I agree, and what's crazy about Kentucky is, like a lot of these other teams that I've spoken about, they're all freshmen. So much talent, but also youth. So inexperience in a way has lost them their 3 games of the season, but watch out, they're still a very dangerous team. But we're going to move on down to the West region, home of the 3rd best 1 seed. And fellas, we're not crossing state lines. We're staying in Boomer country. OU at 30-2, 21-1 in the SEC. They lost a thriller to LSU in the SEC championship game. Do you think that the Sooners are a team to make the Final Four?
Possibly. We'll have to see how the rest of this region plays out, definitely. But they definitely have the potential with good wins over Kentucky. They're near the end of the season. They split 1-1, played twice in a week there. But they're definitely a tough team, going to be a tough out in this tournament no matter who it is.
I agree. OU has been a team that's always been up in the conversation for possibly being number 1 in the country, and for good reason. Let's see the rest of their region, though. How about some action? Akron at 18-14, fills that 16 slot. Rest in peace, Zips. But good to see you here. At the 8 and 9 line, we got the Buckeyes of Ohio State, or I'll say it one time, the Ohio State. Yes, I just did that. They will be playing Idaho, the Big Sky winners, at 30-1. Fellas, this 8 and 9 line is actually really interesting, considering first off the caliber of program that Ohio State is, and then Idaho only having 1 loss.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely an interesting matchup, and it's not very common to see a 30-1 team as a 9 seed. Nothing very common about that at all. I definitely think Idaho has the potential to pull off a little bit of an upset here, but I think it's going to be an intriguing matchup. I think that might be our most intriguing 8-9 matchup.
Yep, and the reason the committee put them at the 9 slot is because their schedule is a cakewalk. Now, they clearly respect the 30-1 record, but they have a chance to prove their worth against the Buckeyes. At the 5 line, we got the Wildcats of Villanova, 24-6. They got bounced right away in the Big East tournament, but make no mistake, this is a veteran-led team that can do some damage. They will be up against the winner of Cincinnati and California, the Golden Bears. That'll be an interesting play-in game to see. That'll be up on YouTube at some point tomorrow. Moving on down, Florida State at the 4 line, runners up in the ACC. The Seminoles did some work this year. I didn't expect them to be this good, but they're good. And then moving on down, Lehigh at the 13 line at 25-7. Fellas, does Lehigh have upset potential here?
Normally, if they drew any of the other 4 seeds, they might have it, but Florida State is hitting stride at the right time, and that's a big thing come tourney time. Whenever you hit the tourney and you're hot at that point, that's a lot of times. That's what you see teams make good, deep runs on. Is that momentum. Basketball is a very momentum-filled game, no matter which way you look at it.
Absolutely, and I don't know. And I had someone walk in on me while you were speaking. I don't know if you mentioned Lehigh's recent tournament history, but you got to remember the CJ McCollum days when they upset Duke. Have to think there's a little bit of that vibe there.
Definitely
Moving on. Go ahead.
Sorry, I said that's definitely something you look at, yeah.
All right, moving on down to the 6 and 11 line. Oh boy. The Golden Hurricanes from Tulsa at 25-7. Again, lost a thriller to USF in the American Championship game. This is a talented bunch. And for those that don't really know what makes Tulsa so good, they have Kansas's entire starting 5 from last year. They all transferred to Tulsa. We'll talk about that later. They're going to be playing Texas at 2011 at the 11th seed. That'll be an interesting matchup, but I'd have to pick Tulsa here. A little bit of an early reveal, but it's fine. DePaul, 28-3. The Blue Demons, they had an excellent season, didn't they? Regular season Big East champions for the first time in either a long time or forever. I don't remember their history. But they will be playing Radford at 23-9. I'd like DePaul, honestly, to make a run, but let's see the rest of the seeds before we talk about that. The Lobos of New Mexico at 28-4, Mountain West representatives. Some might argue that they're underseeded, but the committee talked about them a little bit and said, had they beat the only good team in their non-conference schedule, which is Purdue, they would have garnered way more respect in that regard. They will be playing the Tigers of Clemson at 22-9. That is a very, very interesting matchup that could go either way. Fellas, what do we think?
I think Coach Pitt's done a great job in his first year as a program, bringing in a good class of recruits. But you have some head-scratcher losses there for New Mexico, losing to Air Force and not beating Purdue, as you mentioned. That's kind of one that makes you question, is this team is March Madness ready quite yet? And I think Clemson's a pretty solid ACC squad in a solid ACC conference. I think Clemson might get the nod in this one. A lot of 10-7 upsets looking to loom, looking at this bracket.
Absolutely. And let's just get the 2-15 out of the way so that we can talk about who we got making it into the Final Four from this region. The Badgers of Wisconsin, your Big Ten tournament champions. Oh boy, they had a crazy run at the end of the season. I mean crazy. Headlined by players like Loza, Luka Romanovsky, Donovan Elias. I mean, this team is loaded, and they will have to play Northeastern in the first round. So, I'm going to start with you, Coach Smith, because you haven't been able to speak a whole lot as of late. Who you got making it from this region?
I see this region as a whole, as this is going to be the one that is very chaotic. A bunch of upsets, but I still think Oklahoma is going to make the Final Four out of this bracket. They're just too strong. I think they're a really talented team, and I think obviously as a 1 seed, but I think they're going to make the Final Four out of this group.
And they're not just talented; they're also veteran heavy. They have 2 seniors in their starting lineup. Their star player the program favorite, the hometown hero, JD Avery is a junior himself. There is so much experience on this team that it's hard to pick against the Sooners. Do you share those same exact thoughts, Coach Mays?
I'm going to have to disagree on this region. I do think Oklahoma makes the Elite Eight. I will give them that. A very solid squad, but I'm going to have to go with Wisconsin. I'm riding the hot hand here. The only team in the nation to beat Iowa, you can't just disregard that. And I think that's something I look at when I look at who I think is going to make it out of this region.
That is a very good point. Wisconsin absolutely has a very great resume, and it's a shame that they couldn't find their way into the one slot because none other than the Tar Heels of North Carolina get that last spot in the Midwest region. Another 30-2 team. Our only 2 losses in regular season play in the ACC, and went all the way. Beat Florida State by 13 points to claim the outright ACC crown. These Tar Heels are legit, and they will have to go through Lipscomb first to start things off. Lipscomb, the representative of the A-Sun, at 21-10. The 8-9 line is also another interesting matchup here. We got ourselves the Purdue Boilermakers at 23-8, yet another Big Ten team, and then yet another Big 12 team in the Mountaineers of West Virginia at 22-9. Coach, I know this one hits home to you, but what do you think of the Boilermakers?
The Boilermakers are a tough squad, definitely a tough first-round matchup for us. They are out of the Big Ten Conference, which is one of the tougher conferences, and then to match that up with a UNC matchup for the winner, definitely a tough draw with Willie Jackson and that squad over there in UNC. But I think it's great to make the tournament this 1 year after getting last in the Big 12. This hopefully can make some noise there.
Absolutely. Moving on down to the 5-12 line, we got ourselves the Tigers of Auburn, making it in at 26-6. Had a pretty decent run in the SEC tournament, actually. Beat their rivals Alabama after losing both of their regular season meetups, and they will have to play against the winner of USC, Southern California, by the way, for those that confuse the two between them and South Carolina, and Butler. Moving on down, we got Marquette at 28-4 at the 4 seed. Some people may think, oh, this is a little too low potentially. They won the Big East tournament. They would have been higher, the committee said. But oh my goodness, they got to play St. Peter's in the first round. Fellas, are we smelling another St. Peter's magical run?
On this one, I'm gonna have to go no. I think Marquette pulls it out. They're definitely a tough 4 seed. I'm not seeing the deep run from St. Peter's there this year.
No, I agree. I think Marquette is a very strong team. Going back to the 5-12 matchup, I look at the first 4 between USC and Butler, and I think either one of those teams could give Auburn a run for their money as well.
For sure. You had what? Go for it.
I was going to say, I have to agree. That's a trap matchup waiting to happen there.
Oh, for sure. Auburn plays at such a fast tempo. It's actually unbelievable. But I'd have to disagree with you, too. I think St. Peter's has a shot to make the upset happen. Moving on down to the 6-11 line, we got the Big East champions, the UConn Huskies. What a run they had to snatch away the Big East title from Marquette, and then to also ruin the dreams of an outright title for DePaul. They will have to play Oregon State, the Beavers, from Corvallis at 21-10. They were spoken of in terms of the bubble, but they eventually made it out. Good for them. At the 3 line, we got the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers. Again, another team that was hanging around in the 1 seed line for a majority of the season, and then it honestly fell apart a little bit when they lost at home to Wisconsin, who we know a lot about. And then they lost again to Wisconsin. 2 losses in a row. Rutgers is basically the Kentucky of the Big Ten in that regard. But they will play IUPUI. I gotta learn what the UI stands for, but they're 22-9. Could be a good game, but I smell Rutgers victory all over the place. We got Tulane at 25-6 at the 7 line. I know you guys were waiting for it. And oh man, the Green Wave are here to make some waves, no pun intended. But they will first have to go through Iowa State. Coach Smith, how you feeling about the Wave?
I think Iowa State is a very good team, a very complete team, deep in terms of roster. I think and they're very well coached. It's going to be a tough matchup, as most 7-10 games are, and I think it can go either way. Just depends on who shows up and who falls out.
I agree with that for sure. And let's finish out this bracket. At the 2 seed, we got undefeated Gonzaga. Why is Gonzaga at 32-0 only on the 2 seed? Committee told us this. They played no one worth a darn in their non-conference play, and out of respect for the teams that did, aka Iowa, North Carolina, the 2 Oklahoma schools, they could not put Gonzaga at the 1 seed, but they have them as the best 2 seed, and they will first have to go through South Dakota State. Not as good as what they usually are when they're entering the tournament, but the Jackrabbits are always a threat. Fellas, who's making it out of the Midwest for you?
I'm going to ride the hot hand here as well. I think UConn makes it out of the Midwest region. I think they have favorable matchups with Oregon State and a Rutgers team that kind of slipped down the stretch, and I also think that they can win out of whoever makes it out of the other side of the quarters there. And that also helps them having the lowest rated 1 seed. I'm going to have to go with Coach Quizish's team and UConn to make it to the Final Four.
It's a very interesting choice there, as I see some of the reactions live, and they're scratching their heads. But hey, predictions are predictions, and as the saying goes, reality is sometimes stranger than fiction. Coach Smith, what do you think? Who do you think is making it out of the Midwest?
I think the Tar Heels are really strong. I would like to point out, I don't think it's likely, but South Dakota State is a strong 15 seed. And I think that Gonzaga's South Dakota State 2-15 matchup could become quite interesting.
I agree for sure. And my goodness, what a bracket this is, and we have so much on the way. But before that, let's just dive in real quick and see what the committee was working with, especially in regards to these bubble teams, like the last 4 in and the first 4 out. So here's who they were dealing with. So, like you saw, Butler, USC, Cal, and Cincinnati were the last 4 in, as you see their records and their conferences, but the first 4 out. The main one that sticks out to me, because I heard this conversation, it wasn't tense, but it was very detailed, and it took longer than others. But Arizona, the first one out. Fellas, what do we think of the Wildcats being left out?
Definitely a very uncommon occurrence to have your previous national champion miss out on the tournament, especially by this narrow of a margin. I'm wondering what the committee took into account here, possibly looking at maybe the record there and the strength of the conferences that these 2 teams played in between them and Cincinnati. That's what I'd maybe chalk it up to in my thoughts, but I don't know for sure what the committee was thinking there. Definitely not a unreasonable to look at them at 18-3, seeing them not in the tournament. But definitely one that's not a very common occurrence, I would say.
I agree. I think it's disappointing knowing Arizona had a lot of injuries this year. That's probably one of the driving reasons they missed the tournament. That those injuries derailed their season, and when that happens, you always feel bad for the players and the coaches. I mean, injuries are something you really can't control, but I don't think you can also discredit Cincinnati and California and the remaining last 4 teams in for not having injuries as well. That's probably one of the reasons for discussion between the last 4 in and Arizona.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. And then another thing to add on, you don't see them there, but they were in tournament talks the entire season. Northwestern, they went from being on the bubble to not even a part of the first 4 out. The committee said they had a better look at their schedule. They saw that they didn't play that they didn't beat anyone that was worthwhile, and the teams that they did play that were worthwhile, they lost. And not to mention, they went 3-12 in the Big Ten, and that's not going to get it done. But let's take a look and see the conference representation and the multi-bids. Big 12, the most notable one with 8. 2/3 of the conference is going dancing. Big 10 follows with 7. ACC, Big East, Pac-12, and the SEC are tied with 6. The American with 4. We usually only see 2, we're around 3 American teams in. And then Conference USA, you don't really see them get in multiple teams, but with LA Tech and New Mexico State doing what they did, you had to respect their records. Fellas, what do we think?
I think the Big Ten is definitely the peak of the peak there in terms of who the top talent is, but I also have to respect the Big 12 for their depth of talent. A lot of depth. I believe there's 3 or 4 22-9 teams in that region, or in that conference, excuse me. Everybody just kind of beat on everybody there, and I also think it's very intriguing to see the American Athletic with 4 teams and 4 solid teams, not low-seeded teams. These are teams that most of them claimed single-digit seeds. I believe all of them did, actually. So it's definitely something to look at.
They definitely did, and you were right about that. The American, in regards to those 4 teams, were excellent. But, of course, the expectation is that they take a step up and maybe get a couple other teams to join the fold. But we will see what happens next season. But we're not even worried about next season, because we're worried about now, and we have so much on the way. Tomorrow, the action starts with the first 4. I will be doing everything in my power to upload those games to YouTube, and then either Monday night or Tuesday, depending on how these games are scheduled, as we do not know the times for these games yet. But once they are revealed, we'll have a good idea of when we will be hitting the streams again to join you for some March Madness basketball. Fellas, thank you for joining me. Best of luck in this tournament. I hope everything goes well for y'all. I hope y'all, I don't know, I can't even say meet up in the national championship. Dare I say Elite 8? Maybe we see an Elite 8 of Iowa State and West Virginia, eh?
Hopefully. I mean, best of luck to you, Coach Smith, and thank you for having me on tonight for this show. I really appreciate it. It's a good time.
Yes, I agree. Best of luck to West Virginia, and we sleep in March. We sleep in May. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, there is no time to sleep in March. Good correction there. We absolutely sleep in May. And with that, the selection show is done, and now we got basketball on the way. Oh man, this is about to be a fun week. Thank you everyone for watching tonight, and I will see you all soon for some March Madness basketball.